After a historically bad week, capping off a historically bad year, Joe Biden's presidency is now on the ropes. Things are going so poorly that even his one-time protectors, the media mob, they're now beginning to take note. Look at this headline from fake news CNN. You can't make it up. Quote, is Biden's presidency doomed? Meanwhile, one article from Axios titled Biden's Epic Failures. It details the litany of Biden-caused disasters, both here at home and abroad. According to the article, quote, it's rare for a president to be at odds with Republicans, with moderate Democrats and liberal Democrats all at the same time. But that's where Biden finds himself. In other words, nobody likes you, Joe. Poor Joey. Nobody thinks he's competent either. Even MSDNC's top Democrat Chucky Todd blasting Biden for failing to change the tone in the country, bring people together after his speech last week. Former President Trump in Arizona, this is funny, he said that Biden was more destructive than 5 presidents combined. Now, a new CBS poll shows that 50% of Americans are frustrated with Biden's presidency. Only 25% are satisfied. You know, it takes an awful lot of failure to get 75% of the country not loving what you're doing and fully 50% of the country frustrated at what you are doing. Look at this graph from Gallup. In just 1 year, Biden managed to flip America's party identification average. Look at this. A 9-point Democratic advantage to a 5-point GOP advantage. The best numbers for the Republican Party since 1995. Donald Trump runs again, just needs one bumper sticker, maybe a few rallies, and all it needs to say is, miss me yet? Anyway, and when they won in 1995, that was when the Republicans had been in exile, out of power for 40 years. Now, one reason for Joe's difficulties, he rarely works a full week, even a full day. It's clear he's not up to the job because of his cognitive decline that is getting worse. He is weak, he is frail. On most days, he doesn't even start work till around 10 a.m., typically calls a lid between 1 and 4 in the afternoon. He averages less than one public event a day. And, of course, you'll almost never see the leader of the free world working at the White House on a weekend. He's almost always in Delaware, presumably taking lots of naps. In fact, during his first year, Biden spent more than a quarter of his time in Delaware. Now, during the week of Christmas, remember when COVID-19 was surging to record highs? We didn't have tests available. Therapeutics ran out. Antivirals hadn't been manufactured. Joe was nowhere to be found. And today, while most Americans were celebrating the amazing life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Joe Biden, MIA again. He was once again enjoying a 3-day weekend in Delaware and could not be bothered. They need to really rest him this week because we're going to get a presser out of him. And he had fewer press conferences than the last 6 presidents. Anyway, in his first year. We did, however, hear from Vice President Kamala Harris. She used today's holiday to trash Americans, calling them complicit because the Democrats' so-called voting rights bill is now pretty much DOA. Take a look.
Last week, the President and I visited Atlanta to deliver a message. It is time for the United States Senate to do its job. A landmark bill, as we all know, sits before the United States Senate. The Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act. As Dr. King said, the only normalcy he would accept is the normalcy that recognizes the dignity and worth of all God's children. Today, we must not be complacent or complicit.
Working with, praising Joe Biden. Wasn't that long ago Kamala Harris was ripping Joe Biden to shreds, accusing him of being complicit during a primary debate. Perhaps she forgot her own words. We'll remind her.
To hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the 2nd class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Wow. Now, she was talking about when Joe partnered with the former Klansman Robert KKK Byrd to stop the integration of public schools. You see, Joe even said publicly he didn't want public schools to become, what was the word? Racial jungles. That's right, his words. Of course, Kamala Harris isn't the only Democrat to shamefully exploit race to push a political agenda. It's used every election. It used to be every 2 years, every 4 years, every election cycle. Democrats accuse their political enemies. Same playbook. They're racist, they're sexist, they're homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, now transphobic. They want dirty air, water, and they want to take us back to the days of Jim Crow. And, of course, they want to throw Grandma and Grandpa in a wheelchair off a cliff. Today, Nancy Pelosi said MLK, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Abe Lincoln would all have tears in their eyes if they knew Republicans and 2 Democrats were preserving the filibuster. You can't make it up. Take a look.
If you really, truly want to honor Dr. King, don't dishonor him by using a congressional custom as an excuse for protecting our democracy. He has a monument on the Mall along with Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all of them with tears in their eyes for the departure from our democracy that is happening right now, unless the truth is acknowledged and this legislation is passed.
Now, if you think Nancy Pelosi's theatrics were over the top, many other top Democrats, they were worse. Some openly accusing their fellow Democrats. That would be Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin. Now they're calling their fellow Democrats racist and bigoted. Take a look.
People like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, these are the white people that Martin Luther King Jr. warned us about.
I submit that members of the Senate, regardless of their party, no longer have to ask what we would have done then. We're doing whatever we would have done then right now. This is a moral moment. This is a 1965 moment.
They have sent this signal. They have been very clear about it. They don't care about minorities. They don't care about blacks. They don't care about people in their own districts who they're going to deny their voting rights and undermine their voting rights.
I know Robert Byrd, the former senator, the late senator. I know what he did in the latter part of his life. Yes, he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, but in the latter part of his life, he changed. So what I would say to you is that it is hurting people. The filibuster is hurting people.
Not to be outdone, Hillary Clinton, now trying desperately to regain relevancy, inserted herself into the conversation using an MLK quote to trash Sinema and Manchin. I had hoped that white moderates would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. By the way, Hillary, where were you in the summer of 2020? We could have used your help. Anyway, quite a turnaround from the woman that once referenced African Americans as super predators. Hillary is so desperate to be relevant, kind of sad. Recently, Democratic strategist James Carville. I actually know James, like James, have debated James. He's not a dumb guy. Anyway, he had advice for his fellow liberals, quote, "You Democrats, my fellow Democrats, you whine too much. Quit being a whiny party." That's an understatement. Unfortunately, I seriously doubt they will take his advice. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.